Brooks Running has a new shoe for you runners out there. Did you hear that? Better turn up your volume. In fact, turn it up to the max. Introducing the all-new Ghost Max. It's got all kinds of things to make your knees and ankles feel protected, like Max Cushion, Max Soft Landings with DNA Loft V2 foam, and Max Smooth Rides with their Glide Roll Rocker. Feel better on your run with Ghost Max. Learn more at brooksrunning.com.
The kettle's boiled, Vic.
Great. Perfect timing. Just a dash of milk for me, please, mate.
Here you go. Shall we get started then?
Have you ever woken up on a Sunday morning and said, I'm never drinking again, and then found yourself waving $50 at a barman by happy hour?
Are you wondering why everyone else can stop at 1 while you head to a dodgy after-party with a weird bloke called Disco Dave? If so, it might be time to take a deeper look at your relationship with your reliable social crutch, alcohol.
On each episode, we'll investigate our own dysfunctional dealings with booze and find out if it's possible to stop this deeply ingrained habit before things get too messy.
Yep, we're going to open up a shame shed of humiliating drinking stories to help you understand why waking up from a booze coma each weekend with a kebab sticking out of your top pocket might actually be negatively impacting your health.
Hamish and I are here to delve into what it's like being sober, an unwanted warts and all look into why giving up those cheeky pints or putting down those mummy wines will make you feel happier, help your anxiety and mental health, and turn you into the most sparkly, authentic version of you.
Won't that mean I become boring though, Vic?
Well, Hamish, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm Victoria Vanstone.
I'm Hamish Adams-Cairns.
And this is Sober Awkward. Anyone got any Veras? Lovely.
Is that an e-mask you're wearing?
Charlie says always tell your mummy before you go off somewhere.
What are you talking about, Vic?
Na 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 na.
Okay. I know that one.
Oh, yeah, it's one. Na 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 na. Yes.
That I don't know what you're talking about. The first two there.
I'm taking. You don't know about Easy Good. Is Ebenezer good?
No.
It was by the Shaman, Hamish. Before your time. I'm talking early 90s house music here. These are chart toppers, these, Hamish, back in the day. You'd have your e-mask, you'd have your Fila trainers on, and it was on top of the pops, so it was quite mainstream.
Really?
Yeah. The rave culture was actually really mainstream in the end. I think it started in the Hacienda, but then it was like all on top of the pops and in the top 40. That's when it got uncool.
I've hated house music since I was born in 1990, I reckon. I reckon even as a baby I'd have gone, this is a bit repetitive, isn't it?
It's probably because your mum was listening to it in the womb.
Only classical music. I didn't even know.
That is so predictable.
I didn't even know that there was music that wasn't classical music until I was about 8 or 9.
That's almost child abuse.
It's the only radio station with Classic FM. It's all day on that. At home and in the car.
He didn't know that the Beatles existed.
No. I think my like breaking out.
Mummy, can you put Mozart on again? That's my favourite.
I think the first song that I heard that wasn't classical music was either Spice Girls or I'm Blue, David. That's my first song that I remember.
That is absolutely hilarious, Hamish.
Yeah. Oh, actually Disney. I must have known there was Disney. It's probably just Disney and classical music until I was 8 or 9.
Oh, the sheltered life of Hamish Adams-Cairns. Yeah. I sort of love it that your parents did that. I did have a friend whose dad only played Radio 2 in the car or Radio 4. And we used to get so annoyed because we wanted Radio 1 on. Yes, I know that repressed feeling,
just
Hamish.
The Archers. When you're trying to get ready for a night out.
Yeah. Quick, stick the Archers on. Oh, I bet there's a house version of the Archers.
Oh, for sure.
We'll find it. Yeah, so today I'm zipping up my boots. I'm going back to my roots, Hame. Whether it's drum and bass, French house, disco, Latin, rock and roll, emo, metal, folk or pop, whether you liked pubs, clubs, ballrooms or house parties, there's a high chance you've had a run-in with our old party makers and breakers, drugs.
Ah, yes, the drug episode, Vic. I wondered when this episode was going to come out. Will it be a hard pill to swallow or a trip down memory lane for you? Who knows? The real question is it time to ditch the number of the dealer, Vic?
Actually, Hame, I bought some shoes from a drug dealer yesterday. I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think on my phone it was called Drugless. I can't remember if his
dealer's
actual name was Douglas. Oh, Douglas.
We used to say that to a post box every time we drove past. Take me to your dealer.
Were you high?
Probably, yeah. I've actually been wanting to do an episode about this for absolutely ages, but my parents listened to the podcast and I was feeling a bit anxious about sharing my history on here. So I've decided to ask them to miss this one out along with my mother-in-law. I don't know why taking ease at the weekend is really any worse than downing 5 pints of Stella every Friday night, or why I feel more nervous about talking about this. But that's what we want to find out. And also, I want to dig into this term Cali-Sober, which is something that keeps popping up on my Instagram feed.
That's right. Today we want to discuss Cali-Sober, the need to feel more happy in regards to recreational drug use, and discuss if being 100% sober from all drugs is the best option for you.
This podcast, of course, is based around our own knowledge of this topic. For me, total abstinence from all mind-altering substances works, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. But what we will do is highlight the dangers having a dabble poses when you're sober. So whether it's blotter, base, billy blow, beans, bath salts or bud, we're going to try and work out why sober is better for you than Cali-Sober.
People ask us questions all the time, like, I've given up drinking, but is a couple of lines of coke okay?
Or I've been sober for a year and I'm thinking of taking a line of MDMA at a festival next weekend. What do you think, Vic? And actually, we find it really hard to respond. So I'm sorry for anyone that's emailed us and we haven't responded to that. That is not our question to answer.
We are not the people to come to in that situation.
No.
We cannot tell you to do or don't do drugs. That's not our place. As your parents.
As your parents, yeah.
Just CC your parents into those emails.
Yes.
So today we'll try to give you an unbiased look at what recreational drugs do, why humans take them, and if it really is better to just say no.
So you wouldn't know really, Hamish, because you're younger than me.
I know Just Say No.
Oh, you know the Just Say No campaign from Grange Hill?
I don't know where it's from, but
it's
I
from
know.
Grange
Is
Hill.
it?
Yes, yeah. Just Say No. It's a classic.
Head I was thinking, is it from Biker Grove?
No, it was from Grange Hill. I think his name was Ziggy or Zamo or something. Yeah, and it was just a controversial topic in the mid-'80s.
Just Say No.
Just Say No, yeah. So, dear Sober Awkward Whistle Posse, we want you to finish this podcast with a clear understanding of why just doing you and being 100% drug-free is better than sitting in a nightclub toilet with your eyes rolling in the back of your skull, gurning like a horse.
Nay, bother, Vic.
Very unstable, Hame. I mean, there are so many horse jokes that we could have in this one. But why the long face, Hamish?
My favourite bit about reading the jokes that you write is not the reciting them on the podcast. It's actually just imagining you like huddled over your laptop, typing away, a little horse joke pumps in and you giggle to yourself. There's no one else in the room. You giggle to yourself, oh, I can't say that on the podcast.
I know, so I do, yeah, you're exactly right. And it's funny, I do that a lot because I spend a lot of time at home on my own when the kids are at school or at kindy, and I do a lot of writing, so I'm often trying to think up jokes. So it's actually, I spend a lot of my day doing that.
Just thinking of puns.
Yeah, just thinking of puns and laughing to myself in a room on my own. Yeah. It's very odd. Yeah, so let's start and find out what this term Cali-Sober is. Cali-Sober means California sober. California sober is a term typically used to describe people who decide to quit consuming drugs and alcohol, with a few exceptions. While everyone interprets this lifestyle choice differently, marijuana is the most commonly cited acceptable substance for someone who considers themselves California sober. Some people expand this definition to include psychedelic drugs such as psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, LSD, and ayahuasca, but then it also goes on to MDMA and cocaine as well. So this term keeps popping up, Hamish. There's a few accounts on Instagram that are called Cali-Sober. So look them up and you can find out a bit more what it's about. Mm-hmm. It is actually really fascinating, and I don't really have an opinion on it, but I do want to find out more about it.
Mm-hmm.
Would you go off to the Amazon and puke your ego onto the lap of a shaman, Hamish?
Well, we're talking about ayahuasca here. I think I'm right in saying that ayahuasca isn't illegal, although I want to talk later about this whole legal and illegal thing.
Yeah.
I think I would do ayahuasca, only because I've got loads of friends who has, and it has totally changed their lives. And I'm curious to know what that is. I'm sure people also have awful experiences on it, but because it's not illegal, you do it in like a safe environment with a professional. I think I'd like to do it. Although logistically, I have a little baby.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way that I can do it for like years. I might do it in my retirement.
For me, it's risky. Like anything that we're going to talk about today, I find risky. And that's why we're going to be a bit good cop, bad cop again here today, because we're going to talk about different views of this. So we try and cover the opinion of everybody out there, which of course is hard. So don't email us if we offend you in some way. But I just think I've seen news articles of people going to South America to do ayahuasca. People like tech billionaires do it and stuff, don't they? And they don't come back from it. It's like a trip, wander off into the Amazon jungle, and they never come back, and they're mentally ill afterwards. And you've got a young child. You can't take that risk.
Yeah.
If I said to you, Hamish, like now, I've got ayahuasca and I'm going to send you off to the jungle in the Amazon, I'm going to pay for the whole trip, would you do it?
No.
No. Why?
Well, there's no way I can get that past Liz.
Yeah, that's true.
She'll be like, what? I'm coming too.
Yeah. But would you do it though? Would you do the drug with your son, having a son? No, see.
It's about doing a bungee jump now,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's kind of like you don't want to put yourself at risk, especially when you have children. And I think that's what we're going to talk a lot about today, is whether it's worth the risk.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd also be worried that you wouldn't come back, and you'd probably come back with a small parasite living in your body.
Sounds quite nice.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Let's begin by giving you a brief overview of our own party drug use. Now, I know you were not much of a dabbler, Hamish. Why was that?
Yeah, I wasn't big into it. And I'm slightly concerned to even talk about it, only because I think of like people whose careers I like. So in England, Greg James, or here at Hamish and Andy, I'm like, everyone probably knows that they've done drugs, but they're not talking about it.
No, of course, yeah.
Or like even Ed Sheeran, he implies that he's done drugs. He talks about it in some of his lyrics, but he doesn't outright say yes or no.
Yeah, bad habits.
Bad habits.
Yeah.
Does lean towards the idea that he had a problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of how I feel about talking about drugs publicly, even though I know really it's only if you want to be like Prime Minister or President that they ask, have you done drugs? And then it becomes a big story. Oh, Barack Obama smoked weed at college.
Yeah.
So I sort of feel uncomfortable talking about it in the way that you do with your parents. But I also see the other side of the coin, which is there shouldn't really be a stigma. And that's where it comes to this illegal and legal thing. Everyone drinks loads of alcohol, but it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to champion it. It's okay for it to be on TV. But if you did the same with cocaine, it is like you are a bad guy. So I think when you do give up alcohol, you become more aware of the fact it's kind of weird that alcohol's legal, which we'll talk about later. I think your whole perception of legal and illegal drugs and whoever makes the rules around that can become a bit skew-if. Yeah,
it's like, that's okay, well, that's not, but I'm still going to do it, but it has to be kept a secret.
Absolutely.
And then there's, of course, with any secret, shame runs alongside it.
For sure. So I kind of see that I should talk about it as well. But I think for me, like you alluded to, I was bad at doing drugs. Everyone around me did drugs. I don't know if you grew up in a similar circle of friends or still have a similar circle of friends now, but basically everyone I know was doing them.
Yeah.
You would have been very much the odd one out if you never ever did it. But yeah, I wasn't good at doing them. So, which sort of helped me just not do them very much or very often.
Good.
I feel like, where can I start with this? So I guess most people sort of started doing them on their gap years, and it's pretty tame. You're smoking the occasional joint maybe. People got into ripping bongs at uni. Yeah. I have never been able to do it.
Right.
I've literally never ever done it without coughing or throwing up.
Yeah.
So that's helpful if you're very bad at it.
Very helpful.
Very good, yeah. Also, if you throw up after one beer, you're probably not going to drink beer that often.
Yeah.
I was the equivalent of throwing up after one beer on drugs.
Okay. That's probably, I agree with you, that's probably helped you never have any problems with it.
For sure. I think I can understand why people do it around house music. You like house music.
Yeah.
I found house music so dull. If anyone wants to do drugs to listen to house music, I at least understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, you probably have to take
Being
drugs.
completely sober in that environment is unbearable. So I understand that.
Don't say that, Hamish, because we're doing it soon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but Fatboy Slim doesn't count.
It's always going to be
good.
Is
Fatboy Slim house music?
Yes, of course it is. Well, it's,
see, I like Fatboy Slim.
It's big beat, really, isn't it? That's how it's described.
I like Fatboy Slim, but I don't like house music. Maybe that's an oxymoron. I've always been very aware of privilege, and I eventually had a day when I realised, who can afford these drugs? So looking around, everyone's doing coke, and I was like, I definitely can't afford to do coke. Like coke in England was like 80 quid a gram. Here it's $300 a gram. I was like, I can't justify this.
No.
So I was like, I don't want to be the person. I never earned a lot of money, and I was like, I don't want to be the person that spends even a little bit of my money or a big percentage of it on drugs.
Yeah.
I saw it as like everyone doing drugs is privileged or spoiled or like rich beyond their means. I had very like negative perception of what people that could afford drugs.
You got to get
were.
friends that take drugs. That's what I used to do, and that was freebie drugs then.
Well, that's part of it. I was so terrified of picking up from drug dealers. I was like, I don't deal with it.
It is quite
just
scary.
in my head, you know, in the way that if you swim in the ocean, you imagine Jaws coming up at you.
Yeah.
If I was ever part of like the pickup, I was just imagining like coppers doing laps going, oh, they look a bit dodgy. Like the similar sort of like catastrophizing.
It's so good that you were conscious of that though. Like I just didn't care. That you were. It's good to be scared because it is scary. Some of it, yeah.
And I also think that over like my 20s, like my friendship groups approach to drugs changed. So initially it would be, hey, we're going to a nightclub, we'll do them because it enhances the nightclub experience. And I sort of like, okay, I can see that. When it got to the stage of like, it's Tuesday, everyone's in the pub, why not?
Yeah.
Or it's Saturday and we're at a wedding, boring. That's why I never really like house parties. I was like, if you want to do drugs at a club and it's served a purpose, I could understand it.
Yeah.
House parties just people sitting on your lounge, just like snorting coke on your kitchen table. I was like, I never enjoyed house parties.
I guess that's when it's getting too much, isn't it? It's like you enjoyed it at the nightclub. Maybe we'll enjoy it at the house party, or maybe we'll enjoy it at the pub on a Tuesday night. And I think that's, again, the risk. It starts to get more and more often, and you end up with an addiction issue. Yeah.
So I guess I was lucky in that I didn't do it often because I was bad at it and I was kind of afraid of it, I suppose.
I wasn't afraid of it. I was the opposite. I was not afraid of anything, which is to my downfall, really, Hamish, because I wasn't scared. I was invincible in my early teens, and that was just one extra thing that was going to add to my rebellion. I was happy to drop, dab, sniff or bomb anything from a very young age.
What age?
I would say I did my first E when I was 14. So I went to an illegal rave in Reading and I did a pill and I loved it and I felt suddenly at one with everybody. I was in a room full of robots and lasers and amazing music with some really good mates. And it was like your classic halcyon days of raving.
Yeah.
So I do have good memories of that one time.
Yeah.
But I think then it became so frequent that it lost its buzz, that it lost its kind of the clarity and the enjoyment of it because I just wanted to do it more and more and more. And that is the problem with me with anything, is that if I enjoy something, I want more of it.
Yeah.
That is addiction right there.
So was your first drug that you tried ecstasy? It wasn't even like a joint or something less
No, I think it
intense?
was ecstasy first. And I think I did LSD. I've written a big chapter in my book about both of these experiences because they're very relevant to my behaviour with alcohol. Yeah, and I did LSD and I ended up having a really horrible trip and I actually never did that again.
Yeah.
But I was always up for trying everything, doing everything my parents didn't want me to do because that was kind of my plan. I was the people pleaser. I had a group of friends that were doing it. I think your group of friends, like you mentioned, has massive impact when you're a young kid. You just want to do what everybody else is doing. And I was a sheep. I just followed the herd, which I wish I hadn't been like that, actually, Hamish, because it ended up causing me all sorts of issues. And the problem was with alcohol, it was like fuel to the fire because I'd have a few beers and then my inhibitions would go and I'd be happy to take anything off anybody. And that was risky behaviour in itself. The rave scene for me, I was in that perfect age. I was 14, 15. There was illegal raves in Oxford, all going on around me. You'd just phone a number from a petrol station, go and meet a group of cars. My sister used to drive her little Peugeot and we'd go and find an illegal rave in a farmer's field somewhere. It was all so exciting at that stage. It hadn't really happened before. But of course it involved drugs. I only actually went to one illegal rave in the end that my parents did find out about. So instead I used to go up to the Channel Club or Strawberry Sundays or the Vauxhall Tavern. Like these were all the classic ravey clubs up in London. I was really young and really impressionable and would take anything that someone handed to me. There was always guys that was sort of sneaking amongst the crowd offering whiz and ease and coke, and I found it all really exciting until it wasn't, I guess. It sounds like we were both on very different pages on this one, Hamish. Due to some bad experiences at school and because I had no direction, I was out to embrace oblivion.
Yeah, it sounds like you were more aware of the ups and I was more aware of the downs.
I was prepared to deal with the downs because I enjoyed the ups so much. I knew there was downsides, but I never knew that I'd get anxiety or that I'd feel mentally ill afterwards. I was like, well, I can have a come down and smoke a spliff in the back of someone's Cortina, and that's all right. It's kind of a giggly thing that I do with my mates. There's no repercussions. Yeah. But it took the drug intake to escalate for me to actually feel all the downsides.
It's a bit like alcohol. If somebody had said to you at 16, 17, hey, drug use might lead to anxiety, you might piss off, I'm just having a party, you wouldn't have listened.
It's one of those things that I had to experience it to be where I am today. 100%. I had to know what drugs did to me to be able to know that they were bad for me. Yeah. Let's have a little chat about our good experiences. People take drugs for all sorts of reasons, mostly to feel good or better than they feel in their day-to-day life. Hamish, could you see why people took drugs back in the day?
Well, like I mentioned, I can see why people take it at house music gigs.
Yeah.
Just get through it. Just
to get through the music.
Worst music in the world.
Do you remember that one? Josh Swink. That's literally how it went.
Really? Yeah, awful.
I'll just be standing next to a speaker stomping.
Yeah. Head in the speaker, often, Awful. I guess one of the reasons that people do take them, and I don't know if this is I don't even think this is a British thing, but people are not good at opening up and expressing love or saying things that they feel. I'm saying it's a British thing. I think that's just a world thing. I think humans are generally more reluctant to be gooey. And on drugs, those inhibitions fall away.
So true.
You say, you love everyone, let alone your best friend who's sitting with you. Yeah. And that is a nice environment to be in. I think that is actually... And I don't think that this is necessarily to do with drugs, but I love music festivals because it's an environment where everyone's loving each other.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're all high or not may or may not be the case, but it's just a very friendly, positive place to be.
And I think the problem is, Hamish, is that we haven't tested that with sobriety. There's not any events that you can go to where there's hundreds of thousands of people not on anything, not on drugs, not drinking, not anything. It doesn't happen because we're so used as a culture to flood those sort of events with drugs and booze that it's unavoidable. Wouldn't it be lovely if you could just go to a massive event with 100,000 people and know that everyone was sober? I bet you'd have that same feeling.
Yeah, I think you're right. I get the idea of people wanting to be in part of something together.
Yeah.
You're all sitting in a circle. Let's all eat this mushroom at the same time. We'll do the eat at the same time. I understand that that's like a group thing you want to feel together. And, like you say, it's a very easy way of being rebellious. If the first thing that you do to say no to you to piss off your parents is have an alcoholic drink, the drug is that the next step. It's the next box to tick, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Particularly when you first move out of home, when you first go on your first trip, your gap year, wherever it might be, moving away to uni. I can understand how it's another fuck you parents. I get it. There's a lot of bad things to do with drugs. One of the ways that they are used positively, like medicinally, is this idea of expanding your mind or reaching places that you didn't think possible in your sobriety. That's why they use PTSD, or psilocybin's use it as well. So I can understand the positive side of it if it's taken in a controlled way. Unfortunately, most of the time it's not taken in a controlled way, and it's not taken to expand your mind, it's taken to get off your nut.
And also it's given to you by somebody you don't know most of the time, which is another risk on top of that, isn't it? From a dodgy dealer who's laced it with rat poison or whatever.
Yeah. And also, it's interesting to talk about the different rules in different countries. Like in England, if you get caught with a bag of coke, it's a slap on the wrist. If you get caught with anything in Australia, you have got a court date. You are literally going to court. There is no getting out of it. Yeah. They're much less lenient.
And also, those risks at a young age, that could end up ruining your whole life, having a criminal record for, having a gram of speed or whatever it is. You don't think about that at those young ages. You just don't think about the consequences. I never thought about things like that.
Well, maybe that's what England's doing wrong. The amount of times I've been to clubs and my friends have been patted down on the way in and they found drugs and they just take your drugs and go, you're still allowed into the club. There's no escalation. There's no real consequence other than, that was money that I spent and I can't do the thing.
Yeah.
What about you? What were your positive experiences? It feels weird to even be talking about positive experiences. I guess it's important to speak about it because anyone that has done drugs or has drunk alcohol, there were good times for sure. There were a shitload of bad times, but I guess, we can talk about both in this environment.
And I think it's important to say that Hamish and I, we're talking about this because it's a conversation that two friends would have. And Hamish and I are friends, so we're going to talk about it. And the reason we talk about these things is to take away those stigmas. And, you know, if you do have a problem with it, make it okay to chat about it with a mate or whoever you want. We know that it's a toxic subject for some people and people don't want to approach it because it is illegal. But that doesn't mean to say it's not going on. And if it's going on, we're going to talk about it.
Absolutely.
I liked, when I was, used to go to raves and house parties and things, as you did, I liked the oneness of it. I loved the music. I loved peaking to those crescendos and asking people in a toilet if they'd come up yet. I used to spend most nightclub nights in a toilet gurning under the hand dryer with somebody I'd never met before.
Yeah, tell them how much you loved them.
Yeah, tell them how much you loved them, and then you'd come out and then it'd be daylight.
Yeah.
It would go on all day. I topped up all my drug taking with alcohol, which probably didn't help, but it meant I could stay awake longer, because with drinking I'd probably be in bed by 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But I loved those crazy escapades that drug took me on at the time. I used to go out on a Friday, I'd come back on a Sunday after doing a mushroom hunt on the Yorkshire Downs or whatever. There's so many weird adventures that it took you on. I'm not saying that's good, but it was just a part of my life. It was often cheaper than alcohol, which was obviously a benefit when I was a teenager.
That is a big thing that needs to be discussed, actually.
Yeah.
Because a pill was a tenner when I was at uni.
15 quid for an e.
Okay, $15, which was so much cheaper and that's like the price of 2 pints.
Yeah.
So loads of people do drugs on a night out rather than booze because it's cheaper, which is pretty wild, isn't it?
It is funny, isn't it?
They just drink water all night.
Isn't it strange where it's cheaper? It shouldn't really be cheaper, should it?
Well, yeah. We spoke about that on a Prohibition episode, how booze is too cheap.
If you would like to support the Sober Awkward podcast, we're excited to announce that we've joined Patreon. Patreon is a membership platform which allows you to give back for the content you love.
By buying Sober Awkward a cuppa once a month, we can keep the giggles coming and continue sharing our sobriety message.
By joining Patreon, you get access to Sober Awkward merch, extra content, special promos and loads more. Just find the link in the show notes or head to patreon.com and search for Sober Awkward.
And together we can learn how to feel the awkward and do it anyway.
I loved everything about the sort of drug taking scene when I was younger. I'm not proud of that. It's just where I was at that time. I loved the dancing. I loved the clothes. I loved the cat suits and bum bags and skinning up spliffs in cars and everything, all the paraphernalia involved in that scene. I just adored it.
Well, of course. We're impressionable, and let's face it, drugs are cool when we're that age.
You think they
are.
The
rock and roll stars are doing it, the celebrities are doing it, it's sort of naughty. Like, you think drugs are cool for sure when you're that age.
Yeah, I thought they were cool for a very long... I thought I was cool because I took drugs, and I thought that probably from about 14 to about 21.
Yeah.
I thought I could stay up longer, take more, be more awake, be more crazy, be more dancing, be more everything if I was taking drugs. And I thought that made people like me because I was this crazy party girl that never went to bed. But of course now I realise that people are probably looking at me going, she is off her tits. Yeah. She needs some help. She needs to calm down. She's going to die. Yeah. That's probably what people thought.
I can remember being like 15, like Pete Doherty is a legend. I remember not actually thinking, we are watching someone with a heroin addiction just go to shit in the public eye.
Yeah, same as Winehouse. Yeah.
Same Winehouse.
Yeah. You don't really think about it. There's some glamour to it at certain stages of your life. It's only when you get older you go, actually, there is no glamour to that. It's just someone escaping life and not feeling good about themselves. I often say, don't give a party girl a line of coke, give her a cuddle, because that's what I needed. Yeah. I didn't need another line of coke. I needed someone to drag me out of that situation and go, you are going to physically and mentally harm yourself with all the drugs that you're taking. I needed help, but I wasn't prepared to listen because I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, maybe we sort of took different paths at that age when it was where a decision is made. When I was 20, I started going out with a girl who did not do drugs. And she found them gross.
Yeah, so that would be
like
good.
5.5 years of never, ever doing anything, basically.
Yeah, that's good.
Particularly around them. So I guess, it is who you surround yourself with often.
And often there's a path that you can choose to take. Like, I always chose to take the darker path. for me.
Yeah.
And often those paths were presented to me in many situations where you go, right, you can do this or you can do this. I always chose the rebellious path, and that was part of my problem.
Yeah.
But this was all back in the 90s, and for you in the 2000s, Hamish, I guess this scene changes a lot. I know cocaine has become a more popular drug in the UK now, and people take it when they're just going to the pub on a Monday night.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems the more available the drug, the more users of it there are. That's why drugs change and have waves of popularity.
Yes, it's also about the purity and the cost. All of these factors create demand.
Actually, I heard a podcast about this recently, about how you talk about the purity or the strength of them. In terms of the strength of drugs, they are getting progressively stronger all the time. So, you know, now people are not smoking weed, they're smoking skunk, and the pills are, and they're all mixed with weirder stuff.
Yeah.
But they're getting more and more, you know, we want a bigger buzz. It's a bit different to your parents who recreationally did drugs in whatever, the 60s. Now it's like quite intense stuff.
Like rocket fuel sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite scary in itself, isn't it? And also I think the other problem is I've been reading about that bath salts, and I've watched a few docos on that as well. It's that they create these drugs in factories in Amsterdam, and then it's legal because they sell it as something else. So therefore it's legal until people get addicted to it, and then they ban it. But then all they do is change one ingredient in the factory and then they release it again. Yeah. So actually they just keep releasing stronger, all these weird mixes of chemicals for people to get addicted to, and it keeps coming out. So therefore more people are getting their hands on drugs, and even if they don't enjoy a drug for a while and it becomes less potent because the longer they're taking it, there's always something coming onto the market that they will want to try.
When we were 18, 19, it was methadone, which was a plant fertiliser. It's crazy cheap.
Right.
Everyone's doing that. Yeah. I don't even know if it's around anymore, but that was legal. Yeah, you could buy it.
Well, they call it all these different names, don't they, to kind of keep it legal.
Or laughing gas, you know,
laughing
that's legal.
Gas, yeah.
You can buy that anywhere.
What are the side effects of laughing gas apart from laughing?
I don't actually know.
I don't know either, but I'm sure inhaling anything like that is going to be...
I think it's been around long enough for people to have done the studies.
It was probably a bit like that amyl nitrate that used to be around. Somebody give you a sniff of that in a nightclub, you'd literally black out for about 3 seconds. People used to dip cigarettes in it and stuff.
Yeah.
It is so toxic. Like, imagine the brain cells that are being popped with that stuff.
Absolutely.
It's crazy to look back on, Hamish, how irresponsible I was, quite honestly.
More young adults in Britain than anywhere else in Europe took cocaine in 2022, as availability hit unprecedented levels across the continent, according to the EU Drugs Agency. A report on the latest trends in illicit drugs use suggests that 5.3% of people aged between 15 and 34 in the UK took cocaine in 2022, the most recent year for which records are available, and that was during COVID. That's actually lower than I thought.
Yeah.
For only 5% of people between 15 and 34 did cocaine.
But how are people getting drugs during COVID? They get sent in the post nowadays.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's funny, isn't it?
Still, though, 5%.
It's a lot, isn't it?
I would say...
More?
Yeah,
you would say more?
I know, yeah.
That's interesting too, yeah. Sometimes these stats that we get, don't take them for...
No, well, you've got to forget we're not the norm, though.
But we do look at stats from, like, you know, the UK Drug Agency. We're not just like taking them out of our bottoms.
Mind you, how do they get those stats? Have they written to everyone? Did you do drugs? I'm like, no.
No, fill it in on
it's like doing the doctor form. Do you smoke? No.
No,
Do you drink
certainly
alcohol?
not. No, never, doctor. Post-pandemic, it seems MDMA use is soaring. People are out and about and want to heighten the joy of being social again. I can understand that. Yeah, I can definitely understand why recreational drug use is gaining more popularity than ever before. But as we all know, Hamish, what comes up must come down.
Now, we're going to talk about the bad drug experiences. And for me, I want to start off with something you alluded to earlier, which is the idea that you thought, and you probably were, considered cool because you did all the drugs. Now, so people start doing drugs, I know, in their teens, and now I'm 20 years on from that. Particularly for us, it was the girls that I remember, like girls that did loads of drugs, like the cool ones who got the boyfriends. Also, there was also this whole thing about girls wanting to be like a bad boy. Quite a few of the girls in my group wanted to be like a bad boy.
Like
who were
gangster?
Like drug addict. No, like had problems with drugs.
Oh, okay.
And actually, 20 years on, they were the cool ones when you're 15 and 16. Whoa, they did ecstasy when they're 16. And now they're like, they've still got a problem with it, or are addicted to it, or get a friend of mine going to rehab, or whatever it is. It's like, okay, that wears off.
Yeah.
There's like, well, you're young and doing drugs, you're cool, and then you get to an age where most people are like, just phase off. You have kids and move on with your life.
Yeah, and you have
the ones
kids
that still do, it's just sad.
Well, also the people that I know that still do take drugs have still got sort of decks set up in their bedrooms and buy Mix Mag every week and
still got the posters on the wall.
It's still like living in the past a bit. And I think there's a point in your life where taking drugs just isn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's like actually you've got kids, you've got responsibilities. Having a drug come down is not going to help you, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel for anyone that did drugs because it made them cool and then couldn't let go.
Yeah, because you're just doing something in a whimsical decision when you're out with mates that could lead you down that path for a very long time.
I also say, for as many nights I've had that the drugs have added to the experience of the night, I have seen drugs ruin so many nights out.
Yeah.
Usually someone can't get into a club because they get busted, or someone, they're sharing a bag of drugs and one person either does more than their share or drops them, loses them.
Oh, God,
and then the whole night becomes, I was so annoyed because they lost the drugs.
Yeah.
And fuck it, let's just go home, the night's ruined.
Yeah.
Okay, what? Like, it's something as small as that can ruin a night out. I've seen that so often.
And it's like a reliance on the drug. The night depends on the drug then, and that's addiction as well, isn't it? Yeah, I've often seen that where people on TV shows and stuff where people lose the baggie and it kind of ruins the night. Yeah. And for me, sometimes I would often be having a good night and someone would introduce the idea of drugs and we'd all go, yeah. And the bits of the good night were always before the drugs had been consumed. Yeah. Those were the bits that we remembered and we had a laugh. And as soon as someone got a gram of coke in and it became like, I just want a line, I want a bigger line than everyone else, and you become really greedy with it. Yeah. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible look.
Also, I think it can cost you friendships in that they're the friends that you only ever did drugs with.
Yeah.
And then you stop doing them. You're like, we don't have a lot in common, or they're a danger person to hang out with because I know that I just want to do drugs and I don't really want to do drugs. So it can cost you friendships in that way as well. And
that person ends up really isolated and having a bigger drug problem than before because they now haven't got any mates and they're just doing drugs on their own. Oh, there's so many slippery slopes here, aren't there, Hamish?
For sure. What about you? What other downsides do you have?
There were so many downsides to my drug taking, I must say. I mean, I was lying to my parents a lot. I once took so much speed that I passed out on the floor in a room. I don't know how long I was there for. I could have died. The biggest downside for me was that my need grew the more that I did it. So I'd do it on a weekend, I'd take a pill, then the next weekend I'd take 2 pills because I hadn't hit the mark. The third weekend was 3. It got to the point, Hamish, I am going to admit to you, and I'm going to shock everybody out there, that one night I went out and took 10 E's. Yeah. So that point in my life is a huge turnaround point for me because I actually had an overdose. I actually overdosed on ecstasy. I don't know whether that's a common thing. Write to us and tell us if that's happened to you. But I kept wanting more, and that led to me overdosing and never actually taking drugs ever again in my life. It was actually a good thing that it happened because I may have gone on to have a bigger issue with it because I'm that sort of person. So it actually led to a total mental breakdown. I was at home with my friend. We'd been out for 24 hours. It was my birthday and I had some money from somewhere and I went and bought all of these drugs and we took them all in one night. And I thought I was dying. I thought I was swallowing my tongue. And I was going to my friend like, call an ambulance. I think I'm dying. And then from that day onwards, for a year, I was in an absolute state of anxiety to the point where my toes were curled inside my shoes 24 hours a day.
Really?
And I used to have to think, uncurl your toes. So I went into a state of anxiety that wasn't escapable. I woke up in the morning and felt like I was having a panic attack until the point that I went to bed. And I had to call my parents and I had to tell them I've done too much ecstasy. I'm not mentally well. You need to come and pick me up from Brighton. And thus started a year of me trying to get better and I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I became fearful of everything. And in fact, I didn't even leave the house. I became agoraphobic and it was an awful time for me. And it was caused by the escalation of my drug use, my recreational drug use that I thought was funny and I thought made me cool. It made me extremely ill to the point where I wanted to kill myself. Yeah. And that's mental, isn't it? And we're saying, oh, it was fun. But it's fun for a bit, It doesn't last. And it certainly didn't last for me. I was extremely unwell. And it must have been very, very awful for my parents to witness this daughter that they knew who was very confident and very happy be sat in a room on my own, unable to leave the front door. The front door was my nemesis back in the day. I had such anxiety that I couldn't even walk out the front door, and I isolated myself from all my friends and I tried all sorts of things to get better. Eventually, funnily enough, I didn't want to take antidepressants because I felt that was just another drug. I was fearful of everything. I mean, I did all sorts of things. I did hypnotherapy. I did some alternative things then, some alternative therapies, because I just was so desperate to feel normal again. And the only thing was worked in the end was some antidepressants and some cognitive behavioural therapy.
Oh, really?
But I never ever took a drug again. I was 22 years old and that was it for me. I saw the downside. I had a year-long come down, which I almost didn't get back from. And now drugs scare me, if I'm honest with you. That's what I was saying to you earlier. It was good that you were afraid of them so early on. I wish I had been more afraid of them. I know what they can do, and it is a psychological mindfuck.
That is one of the things that seems to happen with drugs more than alcohol, is you have a really bad experience and either you give up drugs altogether or you give up that drug. Like, that happens a lot to people. Whereas with alcohol, you have millions of terrible experiences and you still continue drinking. It's
funny how you sort of designed to forget the hangover, but the drug-induced psychosis is something you can never get back from, because you don't want to go there again, because I felt if I ever did, I would not survive it. I've never really thought of it from a parent's point of view. I am not anti-drug in the same way I'm not anti-alcohol. I don't really mind if anyone does anything. People have to do what they like.
I don't judge anyone for doing any of the things. I think, go for it. You know what's best for you. But I've never thought of it, if I knew that my kids were taking drugs, I'd be pretty scared, because
I'd be scared too.
They're not going to be doing it in the house. They're going to be doing it out on a night out, and you're very aware of what that could mean consequence-wise. So, I feel for your parents seeing you change, like your personality change off the back of one bad night out.
It would have been frightening for them to see, because I remember my face was ever so pale. I looked scared all the time. I was scared. I was living in fear, in deep fear, and I couldn't see a way out of it, and it would have been awful. I remember my parents had to hold me down once because I thought I was going to jump out of a window. Not because I wanted to, but I was psychologically capable of making any smart decisions. It was lucky we lived in a bungalow at the time, but jumping out of a window.
Scrape your shin.
I am so scared of not coming back from those kind of trips. Drugs for me are too risky, Hamish.
Yeah. So for me, when I first told people that I was going sober, a lot of people said to me, does that include drugs? It was a question I got asked all the time by my friends. If we're going to have a night out, would you? And I didn't really know. I didn't really have a clear answer, because I thought, sober is just alcohol. Is sober drugs as well? And actually now we gave up in July. I haven't touched anything. I haven't set a rule. I definitely am. But for me, for now, I've not touched anything, and that feels like the right thing to do. I'd feel like I was slightly cheating. I don't think I would ever do a drug and then start drinking again necessarily. For sure there are party drugs that you would have on a night out and could lead to drinking, and there are drugs which are certainly not party drugs, which are, in my mind, maybe more about expanding your mind, or you might discover something or something creative, whatever the reason you're doing it. It wouldn't lead to you having a drink. Either way, for me, I've gone, I'm not touching anything. As long as I'm sober, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
But I can see why that line is grey for a lot of people.
It's so grey, and it is because you don't. The problem is with drugs. With alcohol, you know what it's going to do to you. You know how you're going to feel.
Yeah.
But if you get the wrong drug, or you're even in a bad frame of mind when you take it, all sorts of things can go wrong. Like if you said to me, Hamish, that you were going to go and take acid this weekend, I would be absolutely frightened for you.
Yeah.
Because also your personality is something that doesn't need to be dumbed down or hyped up. You are very content, very happy-go-lucky guy. You've got no reason to take drugs. I'm sure some people take drugs for sadness or for trauma or for all these different reasons. But for you, I can see why people would take them to expand their minds or have a different experience. But for you, I wouldn't see why it would be necessary.
Yeah.
And I'd be scared for you, because I'd feel like, oh God, what if he gets the wrong one? Or what if he doesn't work? Or what if he's feeling weird that day and it all goes wrong? And I would be so worried.
Yeah.
If you ever do it, don't ever tell me.
I won't tell you.
I'll be like following you around like a maniac with binoculars, hiding behind things.
Your finger up my nose.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll put corks up your nose and up your bottom. Don't put anything in there. So we've had a little bit of a chat about this, but why do people take drugs in the first place? What is the reason?
I guess people do them just to relax, to be rebellious, to bond with your friends that are all doing them at the same time, at the same age, at the same stage of life. to experiment. I think, like you mentioned the other day, like wanting to try everything once.
Yep.
There's almost like you're 18, there's a list of drugs in your mind, you want to tick all of them off once just to say that, hey, I've done them all once, you know, I can tell you about them all.
So true. I was literally had a list when I was like 14. It was like, right, I've smoked marijuana, what next? Okay, I'm going to do acid. All right, what next? I've done that. I was literally ticking them off one by one.
And that matters to you when you're 18 or 17.
Yeah.
And now you're like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, so stupid.
Also, I feel like as adults, you don't have that conversation. I've never, in my 30s, turned to someone and be like, so, ecstasy, weed, yes. Mushroom, LSD, yes or no? You're like, no,
you're not cool.
Yeah. It's bizarre, isn't it?
It is bizarre.
When you're younger. I guess some people do it to cope with a problem. You know, we mentioned different personality traits. If you feel like you're a huge introvert and you're boring, if I do drugs, I'll be an extrovert and fun and interesting.
Slippery slope again. All of these things are a slippery slope. Expanding your mind, you might want to do it too much. Bonding experience, that can become addictive in itself. All of these, excitement, rebellion, all of these things are things that could get out of control.
And it's all these things which we could literally be talking about alcohol.
Things. We say things a lot, don't we?
Do we?
Yeah, I think so. I've listened to this podcast a few times when I listen back and I think, I've got to stop saying things.
Okay.
The thing of the thing, it's a really moronic almost, isn't it?
Isn't it?
We're going to learn about some things that are going to make some things make things better.
We talk about science, people think we're smart, but then we say things so often that, these guys are freaking idiots. Yeah. But yeah, these are all...
things.
Oh, no, I'm not saying things. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about drugs, but we could easily be talking about alcohol and the reason that people get drunk. So yeah, stuff. Thingamybobs.
This is a podcast about things and stuff.
What are the risks involved, though?
Well, there are so many with all of it. It's to do with mood, loss of appetite or hunger can lead to...
I know people that have done drugs to lose weight.
Yeah.
People go through a breakup, do more drugs, lose weight and feel good about the way they look. It's toxic.
So toxic.
Yeah.
I met a girl at the weekend who took so much MDMA when she was working in super yachts in Florida that she developed a stutter.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's a downside in itself, isn't it?
Sure.
Loss of appetite and hunger, yes. Emotional distress. I mean, if you have a bad trip or if you go into any of this with a bad frame of mind, it's highly likely you're going to have a pretty rough ride. Memory. I remember when I used to smoke weed, my memory would be gone. I was like a goldfish. I could never remember 1 minute to the next. Yeah. To the point where I didn't know what planet I was on, Hamish, quite honestly. Sleep patterns. Obviously, you miss a night of sleep. If you're taking a hard drug, you might sleep too long, uppers and downers, depending on what you're taking. Personal perceptions of the world or environment that gets distorted. I mean, everything's distorted when you're taking drugs. That's why it can induce anxiety, because you don't know where you are or what you're doing from 1 minute to the other. Addiction, of course, any drug taking is a slippery slope into addiction unless you're extremely careful. Sexual risk, I mean, you bonding and things, people's touch can feel differently on drugs, so therefore you become aroused and it can lead to you making decisions you wouldn't normally make sober.
Doing drugs to have sex for sure, to impress the opposite sex.
Yeah, and that's been going on for millions of years probably. Dinosaurs probably had sex while high on opium.
That is a long shot. Dinosaurs probably had sex whilst on opium. Vicky Vanstone. Get that on a t-shirt.
Don't Google that.
Probably confident that their dinosaurs are smoking opium and then
they're just things doing things, you know, sexual things.
Probably.
Those Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know what they were like. Mental illness, of course. Yep. You're really risking that, especially if you're a bit wobbly already. And often people take drugs to make themselves feel better because they do have mental illness. And then it's, again, a slippery slope into feeling extremely unwell. And for me, it was panic attacks. I know anxiety is a huge thing nowadays. I follow all sorts of groups of it because I've had such a massive experience of it. And it is more prevalent in our society than ever before. I don't know whether it's because people talk about their mental health more or whether because, as you say, the drugs are stronger and causing more side effects. All very similar to alcohol, all of these risks, though, Hamish, aren't they? I guess the only reason it seems so taboo to talk about drugs is because mostly they're illegal. It's almost like making the user a criminal. But let's not get into the politics of it today, Hamish, because it comes up with tax and criminality, and it is too much for our podcast.
Yes.
We're taking enough risks talking about it already without involving the politicians.
No, we don't want to upset the politicians listening to the podcast.
Not.
Now, you've done a poll on Cuppa.
A what?
Poll. Maybe I just need to say poll for every episode, which won't let you say poll.
Okay, just don't let me say it.
No, but I'm interested to know. So you asked everyone whether or not it's okay to take recreational drugs, including LSD, mushrooms, prescription meds, MDMA, weed, etc., when sober. I'd be interested to know if the answers we've got through our Cuppa website represent how the world would answer this.
I think so.
Yeah?
I think they're pretty good. Well, they're all sober. Most of them are sober. So it is from a sober perspective. Like, if you are sober, would you take drugs, basically?
Okay,
so the first answer was sober means 100% clean from all drugs for me. So that was 43% of people. Mm-hmm. So that's a good number. The other answer is yes, it's okay to dabble occasionally. That was 15%. Mm-hmm. The next one is, I'm scared that the come down would affect my sobriety. That's 3%.
Not many people scared of the come down.
No. And the fourth one is, I think it depends on the drug. So that was 36%, Hamish.
Yeah, so that's the second biggest answer.
That's the second biggest answer. It depends on the drug, which is interesting.
I'm not surprised by that, actually.
And the fifth answer is, can somebody tell Dave the Techno Rainbow Dragon to stop following me? That was 1%.
1%.
That's me. I answered yes to that. I was laughing on my own in a room again, Hamish, writing that.
Yeah.
That's a good answer, isn't it?
Dave the Techno Rainbow Dragon. Yeah.
So 1% have got a dragon following them on a day-to-day basis. They're in a psychosis.
Most people say absolutely no, but a third of people are saying it depends on the drugs. That's the takeaway.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting.
When I searched, Hamish, guess what the most dangerous recreational drug in the whole world is that came up?
This is super awkward. Mm-hmm. I'm inclined to say alcohol, but I'd like to say something else.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Alcohol.
I was trying to think of something funny.
Yeah, no, nothing funny here, Hamish. Kills more people than the rest of the drugs of the world put together. And it's the only legal one. Madness.
That is wild that is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in answer to all of your emails where you ask us whether or not taking recreational drugs is okay, Vic, how do you now respond, now that we've learnt all of this?
I have to respond with my own experiences. And I'm not, of course, going to say that this is the experience of everyone. Everybody is different. But for me, the loss of inhibition is too risky. It might lead to a drink. The downers and the lack of sleep could lead to depression for me. And also, I don't think you'll reap the rewards of sobriety if you're still dabbling in drugs, because sobriety is all about having this natural high. And of course, that is the opposite of what drugs do. Sobriety is also about being fully present. If you're taking drugs every weekend or even thinking about taking drugs, it is going to preoccupy your brain. And that was with me with giving up drinking. I lost that preoccupation with alcohol. But if you're still indulging in something that is taking you out of the norm, you're going to have a preoccupation with it, even if it's once a year. You'll be looking forward to being taken out of your own body. And I'm not sure that's a good thing in sobriety. If you are prone to addiction, I do think it's a slippery slope. No, I think I think slippery slops is more to do with putting sun cream on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or slippery slops is something you do in the toilet.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Slippery slop sounds like the runs.
I think it is a bit dangerous swapping one addiction for the other. I'm not a bit. I think it's very dangerous. In AA, they say swapping the bitch for the witch, which I think is an excellent term, because we're addictive personalities. Anyone that's been an overdrinker throughout their lives has a tendency to probably do everything else in the same way. So don't swap the bitch for the witch. Being aware and simplifying life when drugs do the opposite, okay, because that's what it's about. Sober is about no longer needing a substance to be happy. I don't want to top up my life anymore, and I don't need anything to numb out. I understand this is different for everyone, especially those with deep trauma, but I'm not sure drugs would even help with that. I'm sorry, my dog's barking in the background. It's taking away the serious. Sandy, shut up. Yeah, so I think drugs often can bury trauma, which I don't think is good either. A line at a festival, a dabble at the pub, or a dab at an after party will most likely send your sobriety off the rails, and your opportunity of having a body and mind free of any natural or chemical stimulant will be lying on the wayside like a used packet of Rizzlers. What do you think, Hamish? Do you think taking anything mind-altering is risking to sobriety?
Well, I think at the end of the day, you know best. If you're addicted to alcohol, then dabbling in another highly addictive and dangerous substance is probably not the smartest idea, particularly if it leads to you having a drink, then clearly avoid it.
Yeah.
As a result, I think taking party drugs in a party atmosphere is playing with fire. I think it's way too dangerous to be in that environment with an upper. I just don't think that's the smartest way to do it. Really, I think if you're asking people advice on that, then you probably already know the answer.
Absolutely right, Hamish.
Yeah.
If you're questioning it, if it's going to affect your sobriety, do not do it, would be my advice, because there's a chance then you're going into the situation questioning it, which means it's going to go badly.
Yeah.
You're just putting a kind of a negative spin on something that you're supposed to be doing for joy.
Also, whatever anyone's answer to you asking that question is, should not be the reason that you do or don't do drugs.
No, you can't be asking other
It can't
people.
be someone else's opinion.
No, it can't be someone else's fault if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very heavy topic, really, isn't it? Because it is about personal choice, yet we have to highlight the risks on this podcast, and we have to say to you, look, this is something that people do, yet we think it could destabilise your purity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have to stick with our message on Sober Awkward, which is always going to be that your authentic self is enough.
But it's a difficult topic, but it's super important, because if, like me, this is a question you get asked all the time when you first go sober. It's going to come up a lot. People will go, oh yeah, but you'll have a line, or oh, you'll have a joint. So it's good to sort of educate yourself and be prepared for it.
Absolutely, Hamish.
Not that we're educating you. God.
Not that we're educating you, but we're just sharing our opinions on it. No. Thingy, thing. Shall we go to the thing with the thing and thing? It's because we can't think of words to say. We just use the word thing instead. The thing. I've actually loved this chat, Hamish. I know having taken drugs doesn't make me or anyone else a bad person. I agree with the brilliant T-shirt I saw recently, which is nice people take drugs too. It shouldn't be shrouded in shame, and that's why we're talking about it. People know that this is part of our society, and not talking about it isn't going to help anyone. We've got to get talking about drugs and alcohol more and more.
So that's what we do on Sober Awkward. We try and talk about the topics that are hard to discuss to make it easier for others to talk about them themselves.
Yeah, and unfortunately sometimes drug taking is just part of growing up. Whether it's right or not is not for us to say. I guess it depends on the negative impact. Obviously the entire culture, history and politics of recreational drug use is hard to cover in one episode, but we hope this overview has helped you make some good decisions about your sobriety.
Yes, we don't want you going to make a mistake that will lead you back to drinking or risk you having a new vice that could mess with your mental and physical health. After all, we are professional party poopers on Sober Awkward, and we truly want you to be just the authentic you that plopped out of your mother's front bottom.
Yes, I wasn't sure whether to put that in their mother's front bottom. I'm not sure anyone wants that image.
Yeah, that's quite nice.
Okay, yes, lovely. It's natural.
Or tummy.
Yes,
depending on the way that you were
sliced out of your mother's tummy.
At the belly button.
That's better. Oh, yes, by a stalk. We would love to hear your opinions on this topic. I've written that, Hamish. I'm not sure I do want to hear people's opinions on it.
Not on the way you were born.
No, not on the way. I don't want to hear people's...
Leave your mother's front bums out of your emails.
We don't want birth stories. I was going to say we want your drug stories, but actually I'm not sure that I can answer all those emails, because it's a bit of a ruckus, this debate, isn't it, about drugs? So keep them to yourselves. Yeah. No, really. You can email us via our new website, excitingly, Hamish, which is soberawkward.com. You can get access to our community. Everything is on there. So email us through there. We'd love to hear your opinion on this.
What we will say is there's nothing better than whacking on some old house tunes, not for me, and having a dance. We're going to do a whole episode on the Sober Dance rave after the Fatboy Slim gig, so get those Ministry collections pumping and turn up the bass. Nothing like a sober lounge rave.
Yes.
I like kitchen raves, actually, myself.
Oh, yes, I do like I am going to get I've got a smoke machine in the shed that we use for our Halloween parties. Yeah. I'm going to get some lasers. We've got some of those kind of laser pens at the moment that we got in Thailand, and I'm going to put some really loud house music on and dance around the living room. I do love doing that. I'm gurning, just think about it, Hamish. What were your favourite? You haven't really got any favourite house tunes then?
No, because I was all about garage music. So
Garage is house. It's the same thing, isn't it? It's still like drug music.
I can listen to Craig David without... I've never had Craig David.
Craig David's not garage.
Craig David is the founder of garage in my eyes.
Oh dear. Jesus. I think we're going to have an argument.
But our absolute favourite songs would be Flowers by Sweet Female Attitude.
Oh yeah, good one.
Or Sweet Like Chocolate. That was by Shanks and Bigfoot.
That's a classic.
What about you?
I think mine was like Hideaway by DeLacy. I love David Morales. I love The Bouncer. Your name's not down, you're not coming in. I loved all the classic rave tunes, really. Anything Prodigy as well.
Oh yeah.
Yes. He died actually, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, terrible.
I would have loved to have seen Prodigy live.
Oh, I did see them once.
Really? Okay, we'll end with a quote. So this one is from Tim Allen. Speeding is like drugs. It makes everything come at you fast, and when you go back to normal driving, safe driving, prudent driving, it seems boring. That's the danger of drugs. At first, it's intoxicating, but then the rest of your life you're trying to find that very first time, and it never is the same.
Yes, I guess that's what they call chasing the dragon, isn't it?
That's it.
It was the
the
same...
dragon's chasing you, I thought it was.
Oh, either. Either's not good.
Yeah.
Anything involving a dragon is probably not good.
Yes.
But I think that's referring to my first ecstasy experience.
Yeah.
It was really, really good the first time I took it. And then from that point on, I was doing more and more and more to try and get back to that moment. And it never happened. Yeah.
You know the best drug of all? Friendship.
Oh, yeah, that's sweet, Hamish, actually. It's cheesy, but I like it.
I want to punch myself in the face.
I can punch you in the face. Maybe we'll go and do that. Instead of going out for lunch, we'll have a session of me punching you in the face.
That's how I get my kicks these days. I get Vic to punch me in the face.
Don't worry.
The closest to a come down I can get.
Yeah, that is
Black eye.
That is basically a come down. Someone punching you in the face for 24 hours. Thanks for listening. Don't take drugs. Don't take drugs.
Or other things.
Don't take a druggie. If you're questioning your relationship with booze, you're struggling to moderate, or your hangovers are causing anxiety, it might be time to reach out for some support.
Yeah, just talk to a mate about how you're feeling, contact a local doctor, find an AA or sobriety group. Vic's got one.
Yeah, just head to www.cuppa.community.
Remember, if you're questioning yourself, it might be time to seek support.
Even though this journey can be awkward, it is definitely worth it. And if you've enjoyed the Sober Awkward podcast, don't forget to review it, rate it, and share it with your mates.
They have to share it with their mates?
Yeah, of course they do. I'm not doing this for nothing, Hamish. Bloody hell.
How do they share it?
I don't know, just write it on